Thank you so much, Dana, for making the time and coming here. And now that we have started, of course, I do know you, but would you be willing to introduce yourself to our audience about where you work and what is your background?
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I'm a faculty member here at New York University in New York City, and I'm also the director of the International Education Program here at NYU. And that means I teach master's and doctoral students primarily in courses that relate to supporting education, access to education, quality of education around the world, but also programs that involve educational exchange from one university to another, across countries, across borders, all kinds of borders, really, actually. And that's what most of our students are interested in. My research focuses on education and political violence, the interconnections between them.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So going a bit back in your past, where did you grow up, and anything that you would want to share, any anecdote from your childhood?
Oh, so interesting. Such an interesting question. I mean, just because also you don't think that much about your childhood when you're in your day-to-day work conversations, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town in northern New York State. That's about 20 minutes from the Canadian border.
Oh, wow. So you're actually New Yorker.
My father is retired now, but he was an English professor, a literature professor. So I read a lot of books at home from his library when I was growing up. And that was also a defining feature of my childhood and motivated me, I think, to think about a lot of different things. My parents motivated me to go out and see the world in a way that probably I wouldn't have thought to do otherwise, I suppose.
Amazing. So, I mean, I can draw that you were somehow inspired by your father, but growing up, any one person that you would look up to as an inspiration, the people whom you read about or people you live with, anyone that you think was a major inspiration figure in your life?
You know, that's a really good question too. And it's a question that I often ask in my research, in my interviews. I ask youth who they have as role models, who they think of when they think about a role model in their lives. And interestingly, I don't know that I have a really good answer to that question myself. I, as a kid, you know, did I have role models? Probably older kids who I looked up to, who I thought did cool things in high school. My parents, though, often gave me stories about stories to read about people who had accomplished a lot, and particularly women who had accomplished a lot. My father, even though my family, my household was a bit traditional, actually, in this context in the US. My mom was very well educated, though, and was a musician and an artist, and did a lot of those things with us at home. But my father, even though that we had this very traditional household structure, was very much a feminist. They both were. And they talked with me a lot about women role models. I'm sure that had something to do with what I set out to achieve myself. I had a very strong sense early on that I could do anything I wanted, as long as I put my mind to it.
That's amazing. That's something we share in common. I have that a lot. Okay, question number 3. What is that you do? I do know what you do and you just explained, but if we have to put it in simple terms, what is it you do on a daily basis?
Oh, on a daily basis. Wow. It really depends on the time of year. During the semester, during the academic year, I prepare for classes, I meet with students, I teach my classes, and I also maintain research projects. Usually in my case, I do a lot of qualitative interviews, but also I use survey data collection as well. And I work with partners in places around the world, especially as you well know, especially in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Prior to August 2021, I had a number of partners in Afghanistan who worked on collecting data, collecting information on girls and boys' education in Afghanistan, various aspects of it, quality and access. And I guess on a day-to-day, you're asking really, what does that look like on a day-to-day level? And I think it really looks like thinking a lot about the kinds of information that you want to collect from from people that you've never met,
Yeah.
to work closely with partners who are in a position to support strengthening those people's educational access. So my research is very applied.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the question number 4 is, why do you do what you do and what draws you to it? I know sometimes it's like, I was asking the same question from our recent interviewee, and she was like, I was a lawyer she said by mistake or by accident. She said by accident. And sometimes it happens, but what is it that you do and why do you do it? What draws you to the work that you do? The data collection, the work that you do in Afghanistan, or you have done over the course of past 2 decades. Yeah.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I think I can really pick up where I left off on my last comment to say that I'm highly motivated by, I'm really compelled to try to promote social justice and equity for all. And that is the driving force behind the research that I choose. And what I'm compelled to do with that research is I want to try to understand better how to improve lives of people, let's say marginalized girls living in Afghanistan, and get that information into the hands of people who can do something about it. So in the case of Afghanistan, that meant making sure that the Ministry of Education had access to the best information about improving access and quality of education in remote and rural regions in Afghanistan. And also funders at the time, for the last 20 years or so, who are working on providing aid to Afghanistan, thinking about how to help them make decisions that were more equitable, that were more locally driven, and that were meaningful for people on the ground. People on the ground is even sort of a strange expression, right? I mean, meaningful for people whose lives they would affect.
Thank you. So 5th question is, I know you have done a lot of research in Afghanistan and you have written a book on it, but any research findings, 2 to 3 research findings that would actually bust the myth around education or education in conflict that people normally tend to hold on to or try to paint a picture with that, but I'm definitely sure you have a lot to share on that. So any 2 to 3 research findings that you would like to share with our audience?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one we've talked about a little bit in the past is that outsiders don't know what people experiencing conflict want.
Yeah.
Unless they ask. And it's important to ask a wide enough group of people so you have a pretty clear picture of what people want. People who are outside to a conflict make assumptions about what those people living within a conflict want and need. And in my experience and in my research, people who are affected by conflict always or almost always want to start providing education to their children as soon as is humanly possible. So if they've had to stop, if education has been interrupted because of conflict or because of COVID, for example, I think now it's really become a lot clearer to people around the world that education needs to continue.
Yeah.
This is absolutely true for people living in places affected by conflict. Outsiders also don't realize the unevenness of conflict, that if a country is designated as a conflict affected country, that doesn't mean the entire country is affected by conflict.
Yeah.
It might mean that pockets experience it at different times, and some places are perfectly peaceful for long periods. So of course, during those times, parents at this point in our world history, most parents around the world are eager to send their children to school. And this is also true in Afghanistan. It's also true of men who want to send their daughters. As you know as well, the majority of men in our surveys, heads of households in rural areas, prioritize education for their children, including their girls, and through the high school level. They say it's very important in the majority of cases. I think there's also still many Western assumptions. When I say West, I mean sort of the global, what we refer to as the global West, American, let's say, assumptions in the US about Muslim societies that are really faulty, right? There's some assumptions that Muslims somehow don't value education. Of course, Islam values education. It's one of the key elements that is considered most important. And even illiterate parents would tell me that education was important. They had to pursue education, even if they had to go to China to get it.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I was watching this video last night, and there's this guy from the US, and I think he's very famous or something, and he keeps on talking about the burqa and how he keeps on telling, like, oh, look at that, women cannot even read, they cannot even register their smile and everything. And I keep on looking at him, and I kept on looking at the video, and I was like, oh my God, a lot of things is the same way that you're doing to the women in the US. You don't realize that you just don't have to have an opinion about when it comes to women clothing, be it certain countries in the European countries who don't allow hijab, or be it the Asian countries or Central Asian countries who impose that sort of clothing. So sometimes I do think that there are a lot of assumptions about Muslim countries, but also like Central Asian and Afghan countries, where people generally think that if we dress conservatively, we're definitely, like, not okay with anything that's modern or based on technology and something like that. So that's an eye-opener. Thank you. So question number 6 is one solution to one problem that you think is now more definite and more needed, the sense of urgency in that solution. Anything that you would want to suggest to the stakeholders or policymakers that might be watching it?
Oh, that's a good question also. So when you say that, it's a fairly wide open question. Are you thinking in terms of my research, what do I suggest?
Yeah. It's mostly because you have done research, I know, in Uruzgan, one of the most conservative places in Loikandar. And then at the same time, you do have a lot of research done overall Afghanistan. And the problem with Afghanistan's literacy and the fact that nobody can actually find a solution for it is somehow, I do know, is a myth. But any one solution that you would suggest in that context that you think would really help the educational system right now?
Right. Yeah. Well, it seems to me that there needs to be a multi-pronged approach because populations in Afghanistan have changed differently over the past 20 years or longer. Cities have much more access, as you know, to services, to electricity, to internet, and many students in cities could access online education relatively easily versus students who are living, youth and children who are living in more rural and remote areas who will have a harder time accessing those kinds of services. So engaging exactly in the kinds of programs that your organization is engaged in, I think, are very important. Providing distance learning through radio, through television, and also innovating in ways that that some organizations started to do prior to August 2021, and particularly with phone companies innovating with text messages to support girls' attention. I think programs like that have a lot of promise right now in Afghanistan, and people should be supporting them and investing in them. In addition, as you know, I'm a big fan of the very grassroots approaches that have sprung up all over the country, including Learn, including your own organization, Pashtana, but also some of the others that and also some of the others that have been working quite well with local grassroots communities. Grassroots organizations that have been working with local communities, and they really seem, my impression from afar is they seem to be making a difference. Establishing these close relationships with communities and with parents is really essential. We did see that in my research that parents were very enthusiastic to work with partners when it meant that they could also contribute to their students' education. Even if they're illiterate parents, they still want to be involved in making sure that children attend school. They play a very important role there.
I definitely agree with you on that one. The younger me thought that the solution I am working on is perfect. It doesn't have any flaws. The more and more I grow, the more I think about our model at Learn, but also find the need where we cannot be present, where we are not. I feel like all these other partners, amazing work that Code to Inspire, or like the Herat Online School, or the Sola School of Leadership Afghanistan, or any other organization that's being led by a woman right now, most definitely somehow does inspire me more, including the journalists who are making sure to use their resources to make sure that girls who are at home access education. So I definitely agree with you on the grassroots level approach and how it can actually help Afghanistan and change it for better. Okay, last but not the least, any suggestions for those who want to follow your footstep? Any people who would want to, like, you know, follow your research? Because I do know your research, but any suggestions on any books that they might read that you would suggest, or any research work that you have done that you think they should be following up on?
Oh, that's great. Let me think for a minute. Well, you know, I think that having a sense of the importance of persistence and not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. Yes.
Those 2 points, I think, are essential for pursuing the kinds of paths that people all over the world would like to pursue.
Yeah.
Those 2 points taken together are absolutely critical. And at the same time, keeping in mind that, of course, many people encounter many obstacles along the way, and those obstacles are spread out very unevenly. There's enormous amount of inequity in the world. But I still believe that persistence and not taking no for an answer are 2 essential ingredients for pursuing goals and achieving dreams.
Yeah. I really want to suggest people your book that has won like awards because I think it's very important for people to, if they really want to understand Afghan girls' education and how the research or the case studies on the ground are. So if including your book, but also any suggestions that you might have alongside with that, that would be highly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I loved writing the book. It was just a joy and a pleasure to write. And I still am very fond of it, actually, which is a lucky position to be in. So yes, I do hope people can read Schools for Conflict or for Peace in Afghanistan. In addition to that, I think other really good work on Afghanistan. Let me think. There's a lot of it, right? I think that probably some of the latest work that I haven't seen and I would want to read and see myself. Some have to do with documentary films that have worked with Afghans to make terrific art. Let me think. I mean, you know, most of what I read is absolutely nonfiction. I read reports and things like that. So it's kind of boring, dull to recommend. But I think that making sure that Afghanistan doesn't drop from the limelight and in the eye of the world attention, I think needs to still remain focused on Afghanistan. So. Oh, you know, there was a book that came out recently, and I haven't had a chance to read it, but it was written by a journalist who has been reporting on Afghanistan for many years. Matt Aiken, I believe is his name. He wrote about the journey that refugees, people who are fleeing Afghanistan, make, and he actually spent some time with a friend who was smuggled out of the country. He took the route with that friend and he wrote about it. And it's a book that I've been wanting to read. Let me get back to you on some of the pieces I think are
Definitely will be
really
putting
the most.
I'll be definitely putting more and more of your suggestions in the caption. But thank you so much for making the time. And I most definitely always enjoy talking to you.